Welcome to Experts Explain Trauma. Today we've got Bev Mitelman joining us to answer common questions that survivors have about attachment styles. And she'll also be giving us tips to help us on our healing journey. Okay, Bev, here's our question for today. How does inner child work contribute to healing insecure attachment?
Such a great question. So there's a strong overlap between inner child work and attachment theory, right? And attachment styles. So we're going back to that initial time from when you were 0 to 5. So right out of the oven, in those earliest of years, you are most suggestible. So what happens to you, what you feel, what you see, what you experience, what you hear, what you smell, all of that, especially if it's tied to a strong emotion, makes an imprint on you. Okay. Now, the inner child work really has as an objective to go back into time and to almost reparent yourself, to give yourself what you needed in the moment that you maybe didn't get, right? Attachment, when we work with attachment issues, we're not necessarily going back in time to reparent the little version of Lisa or the little version of Bev, but we're recognizing that those patterns are coming from childhood.
Right, from a certain situation or situations from our childhood.
Exactly. And we're recognizing that in that period of time, as a young child, we would have developed coping strategies and behaviors to deal with our environment in the best way that we could. So in simplest terms, we were just trying to survive. But what happens is, for all of us, unless we're aware of our own patterns on our conscious mind, is we grow up into adulthood and we keep those behaviors and patterns. So now, for example, I'm no longer living in a home or an environment that's chaotic. I no longer feel unsafe, but I'm still behaving as such. Right. And so what we want to do is we want to look for the trigger points that exist for people in today's world. So, as an adult person in today's world, where are your trigger points? Where are your wounds? What are your coping behaviors? Right. So, we do lots of things in order to survive. Right. We have what we call activating strategies and deactivating strategies. So someone who is on the anxious side, anxiously attached, has a very hard time self-soothing. They just never learned how to do this. They don't have a template or a model for it. So they're very, very reliant on external sources. So, for example, and I think you shared a story like this earlier, is that if you were upset about something, you would call one friend, speak about it for an hour, call another friend, speak about it for an hour, and so forth. You would relive it. And that was your way of trying to regulate your emotional system.
And all it did was irregulate my system.
Yes, it's not a great strategy, but you were looking outward.
Correct.
Right? Whereas we know that people who are avoidantly attached, what they tend to do is they tend to, again, they will repress their feelings. They tend to retreat. And so, into isolation or into creature comforts, meaning like they'll retreat and let's say binge eat or pull out, a bottle of vodka or watch 3 days of Netflix. That's how they sort of tune out and numb out. Right now, there's so many different behaviors that
even a workaholic, right? Even
workaholic,
yeah,
workaholic, a shopaholic,
yeah.
a gambler, a sexaholic, like addiction, and there's a lot of new research coming into play with addiction. But addiction right now is being talked about not so much as an illness, but it's really a strategy to numb away from those uncomfortable, difficult feelings that we haven't learned to deal with. And so to get back to your original question, we go back into childhood in as much as it's useful to understand where the pattern comes from, but the work is done in present day.
Right, right. So some people are scared to go back into that inner child. Some people are a little leery of that. So it's good that you're sharing that we're just going back to understand why we're
Yeah.
behaving that way. We're not having to necessarily, we're not going to fix it in the inner child work necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that people will be well served by different modalities, meaning like
Correct.
something could work really well for me and not be so effective for you and so forth. So
Right.
the last thing that I do is say this is good, this is bad. I think that we have, various different modalities and people should try and be open to things. So for some people, this is very helpful. Um, again, the work that I do is really focused on present day. So I usually start a conversation with a client. Tell me about the most recent time that you got really upset, right? Like, don't tell me about what happened, when you were 7 years old but
Right. Because you'll go back. You can go back to that, right? You talk about the time that they got upset, recent time, and then you can kind of dissect it.
you can dissect it only in as much as it's useful for the moment. But if someone tells me, for example, well, I don't know, yesterday I was driving down the freeway and someone cut me off and I got really upset and I flipped them the bird. And I'm like, uh, okay. So I mean, that's great. Okay. So what I do is we start to figure out, why did you go from 0 to 60? Why was that such a trigger for you? Where is that attached to in terms of a core wound? And a lot of times it could be attached to a core wound, for example, of I am disrespected. Right? So you might have felt as a young child that you were disrespected by, let's say, your father, and you carry that wound. But in present day, you're flipping the bird off to people.
That's not my dad.
It's some stranger that's just trying to get past you, and your emotional reaction is really heightened,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So it's really in the present day that I work.
Interesting. So, and you're right. I love that you also shared that there's different modalities that work for
Mhm.
us. In some work, yeah, and the inner child work did help me a lot. It- where it really helped me a lot was having a voice, getting my voice.
Mhm.
That's where it really worked with me, is being able to, I guess I confronted my abusers, but it wasn't an aggressive confront. It was more like a little girl sharing, this is what I felt. This is how I saw it. This is how I experienced it. As opposed to, I wasn't screaming at him and, losing control. It was, you're going to finally hear me. You're going to hear what I had to say, 50 years ago. You're going to hear it now, and you're going to hear it from the little girl. And so that really helped me get a voice back.
I love that. And I love that you shared that. And I can share with you that one of the core wounds that we see very, very commonly with people who are anxious, preoccupied, is the core wound of I am unseen or I am unheard. So again, another example of how there's a strong overlap between this work, right? So I would separate the two. Yeah, there's the parallels.
Yeah, yeah. And I think as I had a voice and I felt I was being heard, I felt valued, but not because of what they were doing. I was feeling valued because of what I was doing. Right?
Hmm.
My value came from me, and not I it wasn't that I needed their reaction or their approval, because actually they didn't say anything. And I did this through EMDR.
I was going to say EMDR, for people who don't know, eye movement rapid desensitization. EMDR was extremely helpful for me. I think again, it's another modality that people can try. I'm sure you have other experts talking about it, but to release my own trauma, there was some very specific core moments in my early childhood that I was carrying with me. EMDR was brilliant at that. I'm grateful.
Yeah, I'm very grateful. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know it doesn't work for everybody, but for most people that I've come across, it's really helped, and it really helped me get my voice back. But it's interesting. I didn't even think about it until I'm sharing it with you, that I didn't realize that I didn't need their validation for once. Like, I was validating myself, and that was enough. Yeah.
That was that not only enough, it was everything.
Yeah, it's the core thing of what I really needed to begin with.
Yes. Yes, but that was never modeled for you, right? So you never learned that. So yeah, you were always so people who are anxiously attached are always focused on everyone else at the behest of themselves, right? You always come last, right? So we tend to see a lot of tendencies around people pleasing in this cohort of people. So it doesn't matter really what I want. Everyone else is more important. I'll do it for them. And it's very easy to, disconnect from your authenticity, right? Lose your voice, not be heard, not understand that standing up for yourself is a form of self-love and self-respect.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I didn't even realize that until you said that. That hit
Yeah.
me. That hit me. It's true.
Yeah. And it's never, so it's the act of standing up for yourself. It's not about their reaction, whether they had a reaction, doesn't matter. You
Right.
stood up for yourself, and that's all you ever needed.
Hmm. And they listened. They really listened. It was really interesting and didn't say anything. And I didn't ask him to say anything. I didn't ask him any questions. I just got to have a voice finally. Yeah, it was very powerful.
All right, that's very beautiful. Thank you
Thank
for
you. Yeah.
yeah.
So, what can you share with our listeners about any inner child work they could possibly do or what they could do to help them move towards a secure attachment? I know so much of this really needs to be done in therapy, but
Yeah.
maybe there's a little something they can do right now that can help them.
So I think the awareness piece is big, right? So just awareness that our thoughts, our emotions, our behavior is governed to a very large degree by our subconscious mind, not our conscious mind, right? Our conscious mind is our awareness, right? So thoughts, emotions, behavior are governed upwards of 97% of the time by our subconscious mind. Right. So why does that matter? Well, what is in our subconscious mind is patterns, again, that we learned from childhood. So don't be afraid to go back to your childhood. Don't be afraid to question these things. Recognize that it's very liberating to understand the patterns that you're holding, right? And so what can people do? Definitely awareness, right? Learning about how your mind works, where your emotion, thoughts, and behavior, like how that all comes together. But not shying away from the idea of going towards something that is extremely painful, because you will feel pain, but the sense of relief that you will feel after you have, healed is an overused word.
Yeah, processed or worked
Process,
through. Hmm.
addressed,
Hmm.
a lot of people don't even address, they just ignore. But if you actually address it, um, that allows you to move into a much more authentic and calmer place where it's a place of acceptance. This happened to me. Okay, I've accepted myself, right? I've accepted the others. I've chosen to forgive or not forgive. That's a personal choice. But I'm no longer going to be defined by that moment,
Ah.
right?
Hmm.
Because so many of us are defined by our worst moments in time.
So true.
Yes. And so that's really, I think, the tip that I would give people: don't be afraid to go back and relive that pain. It's temporary. What you will get out of it will be so much greater.
Yeah, that's one thing I share with when you haven't when you haven't felt that freedom from that, it's hard to understand. But once you taste that, once you get on the other side of that, there's there's nothing else in the world that gives you that feeling of, "Oh, gosh, I don't have to deal with that anymore," or I am empowered over it rather than feeling helpless and overcome by whatever that is coming at me. There's that
Yeah,
sense of freedom.
it absolutely is freedom, and it's hard to describe unless you've
It
actually
is.
experienced it. But I specifically used EMDR therapy. Again, it could be various modalities, but to tackle or really, process the death of someone who was very close to me when I was very young.
Ooh.
And I just never processed it. I never thought about it. If the idea came up, I would immediately start crying. But now I'm able to talk about that individual freely in conversation. I'm able to bring joy to the conversation while speaking to that person. I no longer carry that terrible pain of that moment in time that I never processed. And so liberating is a great word, and I hope for everyone to be able to experience that form of emotional liberation. But yeah, I would say that allowing yourself to go back so that you can move forward is really, it's a gift you're giving yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would say definitely with this question, you definitely, it's more beneficial to work with a therapist working through this because it is painful. And you do need to have sometimes another set of eyes looking at things for you, because I know for me, like I've shared before, sometimes I just can't see the other side of it. Sometimes all I see in front of me is a wall. I can't see anything beyond it. And I need someone to come along and say, just turn to the right and look to the right and you'll see there's the exit right there. Because I couldn't see because all I was doing was looking forward. So I think therapists, especially trauma therapists, can really help in this area. And sometimes we just need that extra help, and it's okay. It doesn't mean you're weak. We went through a lot. And we were alone when we went through this stuff, and we don't need to be alone when we go through our healing.
That's so beautifully said. I think it's Gabor Mate. I might be misquoting. I apologize if I am, but there was a recent quote that came across my social media feed that was talking about that it wasn't the trauma that necessarily traumatized you as a child. It's that you were left alone.
Yes.
To deal with the trauma that traumatized you. And
exactly.
That is so right on, because we all experience hardship in life. Nobody escapes that reality. Right. But if you're loved and you're supported and you're in a healthy environment, you go through it in a way that is very different from someone who isn't.
Yep.
So,
yeah. I'm glad you said that. That's true. Yeah. We don't need to try to heal alone. We went through the trauma alone. That's funny because I didn't even realize that was coming out of my mouth. It was just one of those moments.
Those are the best moments.
I know. I love it. And I'm like, oh, that's the moment. I got to write it down. So good. Oh, you articulate this stuff so beautifully for people. I understand it, and I know someone who maybe has never understood trauma could understand it. It's beautiful how you do this. If this question resonates with you, or you have a question for our experts, let us know in the comments, and make sure to follow so you can get more insights on trauma healing.